Chicago City Council votes to phase out subminimum wage for tipped workers. Chicago, CBS. Chicago has become the largest city in the U.S. to require tipped workers make the full minimum wage, as aldermen approved an ordinance phasing out the subminimum wage for wait staff, bartenders, and other workers who rely on tips. The vote is one of the first major political victories for Mayor Brandon Johnson and his progressive allies on the city council. By a 36-10 vote, the city council signed off on a compromise negotiated between Johnson and the Illinois Restaurant Association, which would phase in higher wages for tipped workers over the next 5 years instead of 2, as originally planned. The 10 alderpeople who voted against the ordinance were Brian Hopkins, 2nd, Nicole Lee, 11th, Marty Quinn, 13th, Matthew O'Shea, 19th, Scott Waguespack, 33rd, Nicholas Sposato, 38th, Samantha Nugent, 39th, Anthony Napolitano, 41st, Brendan Reilly, 42nd, and James Gardiner, 45th. With Friday's vote, the minimum wage for tipped workers in Chicago will match the full minimum wage by July 1, 2028. The minimum wage in Chicago for most workers is $15.80 per hour, while the minimum wage for tipped workers is $9.48 an hour. Employers are supposed to make up the difference if an employee's wages and tips don't total the full minimum wage. The tipped minimum wage is currently 60% of the full minimum wage in Chicago. Under the 5-year plan to eliminate the tipped minimum wage in Chicago, the tipped minimum wage will rise to, notably, the full minimum wage in Chicago is increased each year on July 1 to match the increase in the Consumer Price Index, or 2.5%, whichever is lower. The full minimum wage in Chicago stands at $15.80 per hour, making the current tipped minimum wage $9.48 per hour. Restaurant owners are worried it'll impact their bottom line and costs could trickle down to the consumer. Many have said they worry raising wages raises the cost of everything, which means customers could tip less than ever on top of new prices. Some workers who receive tips right now also worry that this plan will actually cause them to go home with less money than they are currently making, despite an actual salary increase, if customers end up tipping less.